She caught me off guard, standing there in her kitchen, her voice sharp but playful, like she'd been waiting all day to drop a line that would make my face burn. "Need a bigger towel for that," she said, her eyes glinting with a mix of mischief and something I couldn't quite pin down. I was still dripping from the pool, my hair plastered to my forehead, clutching a towel that was way too small, barely covering me, honestly. And there was Lisa, my best friend's mom, leaning against the counter with a smirk that made me feel like I just walked into a setup. I froze my brain, scrambling for something clever to say, but all I could muster was a nervous laugh, my cheeks flaming as I bolted upstairs to change. That moment, though, those words stuck with me, looping in my head like a catchy song I couldn't shake. It wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it, like she was holding a secret I wasn't in on. "I'm Jake, by the way, 22, fresh out of college in Ohio, trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing with my life in the summer of 2025. I've been crashing at my buddy Ryan's place in Columbus for a couple of weeks, sleeping on a pull-out couch in his basement while I hunted for a job. Ryan and I go way back. High school football teammates, late-night Taco Bell runs. The kind of friendship where you can just exist without explaining yourself. His family's house was like a second home to me. Always had been since we were kids. His mom, Lisa, was the cool mom back then. She'd let us stay up late playing Call of Duty, sneak us beers when Ryan's dad wasn't around, and always had this way of making you feel noticed, even when you were trying to blend into the background. She was in her mid-40s now, still in great shape from her yoga obsession, with a laugh that could light up a room and a habit of saying things that made you do a double take. That day, though, something felt different. It was a Saturday in mid-August, the kind of sticky Ohio heat that makes you want to live in a pool. Ryan and I had been out back messing around in their above-ground pool, tossing a football and talking about nothing important. Girls, jobs, the usual stuff we'd always hashed out. His girlfriend Sarah was there, too, lounging on a floaty, scrolling through her phone, occasionally chiming in with a sarcastic comment. Lisa was inside, supposedly getting dinner ready, but she'd pop out every now and then to check on us, bringing a picture of iced tea, or tossing out a quip about Ryan's backstroke, looking like a drowning dog's. It was all normal, the kind of summer day we'd had 100 times before. I didn't think twice when I climbed out of the pool, grabbed the first towel I saw, a ratty, faded thing that was more like a hand towel than anything you'd used to dry off, and headed inside to rinse off. The house was quiet, just the hum of the air conditioning and the faint clink of dishes from the kitchen. My plan was simple: slip through, hit the bathroom, and get back outside before anyone noticed. That's when Lisa threw me for a loop. I was halfway through the kitchen, water dripping onto the tile floor, when she turned from the counter, looked me up and down, and dropped that line. "Need a bigger towel for that." My brain short-circuited. My first thought was, what? My second was, oh, she's messing with me. But the way her eyes lingered, the way her smirk didn't quite match the playful tone, made my stomach twist into knots. I mumbled something incoherent, probably sounded like a total idiot, wrapped the towel tighter around my waist, and practically sprinted to the stairs. My face was burning, and not from the sun. I could hear her chuckle as I fled, low and knowing, like she just scored a point in a game I didn't even know we were playing. Upstairs, I locked myself in the bathroom, cranked the shower to hot, and stood under the water, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was she flirting? Just teasing? Or was this just Lisa being Lisa, the mom who always pushed boundaries to get a reaction? I couldn't figure it out. This was Ryan's mom, for God's sake. She'd known me since I was a scrawny middle schooler with braces back when she was just Mrs. Carter, the lady who made the best chocolate chip cookies in the neighborhood. But lately, I'd started noticing things. Small things that I'd always brushed off, like the way she'd brush my arm when she handed me a drink, her fingers lingering just a second too long, or how she'd ask about my dating life with this look in her eyes like she was testing the waters. I'd always chalked it up to her being friendly, maybe a little quirky. She was married after all. Ryan's dad, Tom, was a quiet guy, always buried in his work as an accountant, but he was around. Plus, she was, older. Not that she looked it. Lisa could pass for 35, no question, with her yoga-toned body and that effortless confidence, but still, it wasn't supposed to be a thing. I stayed in the shower way longer than I needed to, letting the steam cloud my thoughts. By the time I got out, I'd half-convinced myself I was overreacting. Lisa was just being her usual self, tossing out a cheeky comment to mess with me. That's what she did. Poked at people to see how they'd react. Like it was her personal entertainment. I dried off, threw on a clean tish, shirt and shorts, and headed back downstairs, determined to act like nothing had happened. I wasn't going to let one awkward moment ruin the day. But it wasn't that easy. When I walked back into the kitchen, Lisa was still there, chopping carrots for dinner, humming some tune I didn't recognize. Ryan and Sarah were outside, their voices drifting through the open window, laughing about something. In here, though, it was just me and her, and the air felt heavier than it should have. She glanced up, and there it was again, that same smirk from before. "Feeling better?" she asked, her voice light, but with an edge I couldn't ignore. I nodded, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge, trying to play it cool. "Yeah, just needed to cool off," I said, hoping my voice didn't crack. She didn't push it, just went back to her cutting board. But the silence between us felt charged, like we were both waiting for the other to make a move. I didn't stick around to find out what that move might be. I grabbed my water and headed back outside, telling myself to stop being paranoid. The rest of the day went by normally, or at least as normally as it could, with that moment stuck in my head. We ate dinner, grilled chicken, a big salad, some craft beer Lisa insisted we try because she'd found it at some local brewery. Ryan and Sarah were their usual selves, bickering about some reality show they were both obsessed with while Tom sat at the head of the table, scrolling through his phone, barely saying a word. Lisa kept the conversation going, asking me about my job search, telling stories about her yoga class and the new instructor who was way too intense for her taste. It was all so normal, so familiar, but every time her eyes met mine, I felt it. That same undercurrent from the kitchen. Like there was a secret joke only we were in on. I kept my answers short, focused on my plate, tried to act like everything was fine. But it wasn't. That comment, that look had burrowed into my brain, and I couldn't shake it loose. That night I couldn't sleep. I was on the pull-out couch in the basement, staring at the ceiling, the glow of my phone the only light in the room. Ryan was upstairs in his room, probably passed out after a couple of beers. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of the floorboards or the faint hum of the AC kicking on. I kept replaying the day, going over every detail of that moment in the kitchen. Lisa's voice, the way she'd leaned against the counter, the way her eyes had flicked over me. Was I reading too much into it? Probably. But then I started thinking about other moments, ones I'd brushed off before. Like last week when she'd asked me to help her move a box from the garage, and her hand had lingered on mine, her fingers warm against my skin. Or the time she texted me a few weeks ago asking if I was coming to Ryan's birthday dinner with a winky emoji that felt off. I'd always told myself it was nothing, just her being friendly, maybe a little eccentric. But now, lying there in the dark, I wasn't so sure. I kept telling myself to let it go, to stop overthinking it. Lisa was just being Lisa. She liked to tease, to push buttons. It was probably just a throwaway comment, a joke that landed weird because I was tired or stressed or whatever. But the more I tried to dismiss it, the more it nodded at me. What if it wasn't just a joke? What if there was something behind it? Something I wasn't ready to deal with? I rolled over, punched the pillow, tried to force myself to sleep, but my brain wouldn't shut off. I kept seeing her face, that smirk, those eyes. It was like she'd planted something in my head, and now it was growing, taking up space I didn't want it to. The next morning, I woke up groggy, my eyes gritty from lack of sleep. Ryan was already up, sprawled on the couch in the living room, playing some racing game on the PlayStation. "You good, man?" he asked, not looking up from the screen as his car screamed around a digital track. "Yeah, just didn't sleep great," I said, which wasn't a lie. I grabbed a coffee from the kitchen, trying to shake off the fog in my head. Lisa was there, of course, moving around in yoga pants and a tank top, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a fitness magazine, all toned arms and easy confidence. When she saw me, she smiled. Normal, friendly, nothing out of the ordinary. "Morning, Jake," she said, pouring herself a coffee. "You sticking around today?" I nodded, mumbling something about working on job applications. She didn't say anything else, just went about her morning, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Like her eyes were on me even when she wasn't looking. I spent most of that day trying to stay busy. Ryan and I hit the gym in the morning, grunting through sets of deadlifts and bench presses, talking about his new job at some tech startup in Columbus. He was excited about it, going on about the perks and the cool vibe at the office. I nodded along, happy for him, but my mind kept drifting back to the kitchen to Lisa to that damn towel comment. After the gym, we grabbed burgers at a diner down the road, splitting a plate of fries and talking about nothing. Old high school stories, plans for the weekend. Sarah came over later and we all ended up in the living room watching some action movie with explosions and bad one-liners. Lisa was in and out doing her own thing, folding laundry, answering emails on her phone. And I started to think maybe I'd imagine the whole vibe. Maybe I was just stressed, projecting my own mess onto a harmless moment. By the time the movie ended, I was almost convinced I'd blown it all out of proportion. Then it happened again. It was late, maybe 10 p.m., and Ryan and Sarah had gone upstairs to his room, probably to argue about who was hogging the blankets. I was in the kitchen grabbing a glass of water before heading to the basement for the night. Lisa was there wiping down the counter, the house quiet except for the soft hum of the dishwasher. "You're up late," she said, not looking at me, her voice low and smooth. "Yeah, just winding down," I replied, keeping my tone neutral, focusing on filling my glass. She turned then, leaning against the counter, her arms crossed, her eyes locking onto mine. "You know Jake," she said, her voice slow, deliberate. "You've grown up a lot since high school." It wasn't the words themselves. It was the way she said them, like she was studying me, waiting for a reaction. I swallowed. My throat suddenly dried despite the water in my hand. Thanks," I said, forcing a smile. "Just trying to figure out the adult thing, you know." She laughed, soft and throaty, the sound sending a shiver down my spine. "You're doing fine," she said, stepping closer. Close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something floral, sharp, cutting through the air. "You just need to loosen up a little." My heart was pounding now, my brain screaming at me to back away, to say something, anything to break the moment. But my feet felt glued to the floor. She reached out, her fingers brushing my arm, light but intentional, her touch warm against my skin. "Elisa," I started, but she cut me off. "Relax, Jake," she said, her voice almost a whisper, her eyes never leaving mine. "I'm just messing with you." But her hand didn't move, and the way she was looking at me didn't feel like a joke. I don't know how long we stood there, seconds, maybe, but it felt like an eternity. My pulse was hammering in my ears, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts I didn't want to have. Then I heard footsteps upstairs, Ryan's voice calling out, asking his mom something about where he'd left his phone charger. Lisa stepped back, her expression shifting to neutral, like she'd flipped a switch. "Night, Jake," she said, turning back to the counter, her voice casual, like nothing had happened. I mumbled a good night, my legs finally working, and practically ran to the basement, my heart still thudding in my chest. I didn't sleep much that night either. I lay there on the pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind a tangled mess of confusion, guilt, and something I didn't want to put a name to. This was Ryan's mom. My best friend's mom, the woman who'd made me peanut butter sandwiches when I was 12. And yet, there was no denying it. Something was happening. Something I didn't know how to navigate. Part of me wanted to pack my stuff and get the hell out. Find an excuse to crash somewhere else, anywhere else. But another part, the part one wasn't proud of, was curious. What was she playing at? Was it just a game to her, a way to pass the time? Or was there something more? I hated that I even wanted to know. The next few days were a blur of avoidance. I made a point of staying out of the house as much as possible, tagging along with Ryan to coffee shops or the mall, burying myself in job applications on my laptop. I'd sit at some hipster cafe in Columbus, sipping overpriced coffee, scrolling through LinkedIn, trying to focus on cover letters while Lisa's voice echoed in my head. I kept my distance from her, making sure I was never alone in a room with her. But she was always there in the background, her presence like a low hum I couldn't tune out. A glance across the dinner table, a casual comment about my shirt looking nice, nothing overt, nothing I could point to and say, "This is weird," but it was enough to keep me on edge. My nerves frayed like an old extension cord. Ryan didn't seem to notice anything off, which was a relief, but also made me feel crazier. He was his usual self, cracking jokes, talking about his job, planning a camping trip with Sarah for the next weekend. I kept waiting for him to pick up on something, to notice the way his mom's eyes lingered on me, but he was oblivious. Couldn't blame him. Why would he even think to look for it? I sure as hell wasn't going to bring it up. What was I supposed to say? "Hey man, I think your mom's hitting on me." That would go over like a lead balloon. Probably end our friendship right there. So, I kept my mouth shut, tried to act normal, even as my head spun with questions I didn't want to answer. By Wednesday, I'd had enough. I couldn't keep dodging her. Couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I'd found a lead on a job in Cincinnati. Nothing fancy, just an entry-level marketing gig at a small firm, but it was enough to give me an out. I told Ryan I was heading down there to check it out, maybe stay with my cousin for a bit while I figured things out. He was cool with it. Said he'd see me when I was back in town. Maybe come visit if the job panned out. "Don't go getting all corporate on me," he joked, punching my arm. I laughed, but my heart wasn't in it. I was already thinking about how to tell Lisa, how to get through that conversation without it turning weird. I got my chance later that day. Ryan was out picking up pizza for dinner. Sarah was at work and Tom was in his home office probably crunching numbers. I found Lisa in the living room folding a pile of laundry on the couch. I took a deep breath, tried to keep my voice steady. "Hey Lisa, I'm probably heading out this weekend," I said, leaning against the doorway. "Got a job thing in Cincinnati. I'm checking out." She looked up, her hands pausing on a tish. Hurt, her face unreadable. "That's great, Jake," she said, her voice steady, but there was something in her eyes. Disappointment maybe, or relief. Couldn't tell. "You'll do big things. I know it." She paused, tilting her head, her lips curving into a small smile. "You sure you're ready to leave so soon?" There it was again. That tone, that look, the same one from the kitchen from the night before. My chest tightened, my mouth suddenly dry. "Yeah, got to start somewhere," I said, keeping it vague, trying to ignore the way my pulse was picking up. She nodded, then reached out and squeezed my shoulder. Her hand warmed through my shirt, lingering just a second too long. "Well, don't be a stranger," she said, her smile shifting into something that wasn't quite the warm mom, like one I was used to. It was sharper, more knowing, and it made my skin prickle. I nodded, muttered something about keeping in touch, and got out of there as fast as I could without looking like I was running. I left the next day, packed my duffel bag, threw it in the back of my beat-up Honda and said my goodbyes. Ryan gave me a fist bump, told me to text him when I got to Cincinnati. Tom shook my hand, distracted as always, already halfway back to his spreadsheets. Lisa was last. She hugged me quick but tight, her cheek brushing against mine for just a moment. "Take care, Jake," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. I pulled back, nodded, and got the hell out of there, my heart pounding like I'd just run a sprint. I've been in Cincinnati for a week now, crashing on my cousin's couch, going through the motions of job interviews and apartment hunting. It's fine, normal, maybe even a little boring. The marketing gig seems promising, and the city's got a good vibe. Bars, coffee shops, people my age. But I can't stop thinking about that week at Ryan's, about Lisa, about that damn towel comment and everything that came after. I keep checking my phone, half expecting a text from her. Some random message with a winky emoji, or a casual "House Cincinnati," but there's nothing. Just radio silence. Part of me is relieved, glad to be out of that house, away from whatever was brewing. But another part, the part I'm not proud of, wonders what would have happened if I'd stayed, if I'd pushed back, called her bluff, or whatever it was she was doing. I don't know what to make of it, and I don't know if I ever will. All I know is that those words need a bigger towel for that are burned into my brain. And no matter how far I go, I'm not sure I'll ever shake.